Awaken your spirit, chosen one. You've been walking through life, carrying a weight no one else could see, smiling when your soul was silently screaming, giving, loving, staying loyal, even when everything you touched seemed to disappear or fall apart. You've felt it, haven't you? That unshakable feeling that something has been taken from you, something deep, like your entire life was quietly stolen piece by piece. Relationships, opportunities, peace, time. And yet, somehow you're still here, breathing, standing, watching a world that never seemed to understand the depth of your pain. But here's the divine twist. They didn't take your life. Heaven gave it away, so you could be rebuilt in a way no one saw coming. You've heard the whispers. Maybe it's just bad luck. Maybe you just weren't meant for more. Maybe you did something wrong. But let me tell you a truth. The world doesn't want you to know. Your life was surrendered, not snatched. You were hidden, not forgotten, covered, not cast aside. Because if the world had full access to you before your appointed time, it would have consumed everything sacred within you. The Zayn, favor on your life, the light in your spirit, the authority in your voice. It would have been misused, mistreated, misunderstood. So instead, the divine pulled you into a quiet room of transformation. If the truth of who you are had not been veiled, they would have labeled you, limited you, tried to own you. They would have mistaken your softness for weakness, your humility for lack, your loyalty for naivety. They would have put a price tag on your anointing and sold you short in places your spirit never belonged. So God let your life be taken from their eyes, from their hands, from their approval, so that when it is returned, it will be undeniable that you were never ordinary. You were set apart. Chosen one. The breaking was never meant to break you. It was meant to build you. God allowed the taking so that he could do the giving, but this time the gift won't be stolen. This time, your spirit will be too full, too strong, too wise to ever be mishandled again. You've survived the wilderness. You've walked through spiritual droughts with nothing but faith and a whisper of hope. And yet, you kept going. That's not weakness. That's power, wrapped in humility. That's the strength of someone who's been called. Let me ask you something. Why do you think it never made sense? Why your path never matched their blueprint? Why what worked for them never worked for you? It's because you weren't built for their system. You're not part of the crowd. They sense it, even if they can't explain it. You've been marked since birth. And when someone is marked, everything about them becomes a spiritual battlefield. The enemy didn't attack you because you were weak. He came after you because you carried destiny and the takings you've endured. They weren't signs of defeat. They were signs of significance. Your relationships were stripped, your peace shaken, your plans shattered, because something greater was being carved within you. Not in the spotlight, not on the stage, but in the silence, in the solitude, in the spiritual shadows where only God could see. You were being made in secret. A sacred process for a sacred vessel, and soon, so very soon, the same life that felt like it was taken from you will return, but this time it will return with power, with clarity, with authority. You will no longer be overlooked, underestimated, or passed by. What was taken was only temporary. What's coming is eternal. If this message reached your soul, then it was meant for you. Like this video, subscribe and comment. I am ready to rise. If you know your life wasn't stolen, it was sanctified. Let's walk this journey together. Your time is now. Chosen one. Something deep inside you has always known. You weren't like the others. Even when you tried to blend in, even when you wore the same clothes, spoke the same language, laughed at the same jokes, something in the atmosphere always shifted when you walked in. People could feel it, even if they couldn't explain it. They couldn't place what it was, but they could feel your presence. Not because of anything loud or dramatic. No, it was your stillness, your spirit, the quiet weight of who you are. And because of that, Life never played fair with you. While others were coasting through seasons of comfort, your life felt like a constant stripping, like you were always giving up something, or someone, or somewhere. Like the moment you started to feel safe, it was taken from you. One relationship after another, one opportunity after another, one season after another. You got used to the goodbyes, numb to the sudden endings, familiar with the feeling of watching your world collapse in silence while everyone else kept smiling like nothing happened. But let me tell you something sacred. What looked like loss was protection. What looked like theft was transition. What looked like destruction was divine design. Your entire life hasn't been taken from you out of punishment. It was surrendered by heaven, piece by piece, layer by layer, not to break you, but to build you into someone the world couldn't ignore once your time arrived. You were never meant to live a predictable life. You were meant to carry something holy, something powerful, something that couldn't be birthed in comfort. The stripping was sacred because not everything can come with you. Not every friend can survive your calling. Not every door is worthy of your presence. Not every offer is aligned with your destiny. So God, in His wisdom, allowed things to fall apart so you wouldn't. He stripped away the people who only loved the surface of you. He stripped away the dreams that were too small for the magnitude of your soul. He stripped away your dependence on things that couldn't sustain you for where you're headed. It felt cruel in the moment, like your prayers were being ignored, but the truth is, your prayers were being answered in a language only your future self would understand, because the version of you that's rising now, this version couldn't be built with the clutter of false identities, toxic attachments, and misplaced loyalty. This version had to be carved in silence. In the shadows, in the places where no one was clapping for you, where no one saw your pain, where no one understood the price you were paying in private. You were not being punished. You were being purified. You've walked through fire not to be burned, but to be branded, marked, sealed for something eternal. And the fire didn't destroy you, it forged you. It burned off what couldn't stay. It revealed what couldn't be faked. And now you carry something rare, authentic, unshakable, chosen one. This is why you couldn't fit in. This is why no matter how hard you tried, something always felt off when you followed the crowd. Your spirit rejected conformity. Your soul couldn't settle. You were born to be different, not for ego, but for assignment. And because of that, your life has always had a rhythm that no one else understood. Delayed when others were rushing, silent when others were seen, alone when others were surrounded. But your solitude wasn't empty, it was sacred. You were being hidden for preparation, for refinement, for revelation, because what's coming to you doesn't require performance, it requires alignment. And God needed to strip away everything that kept you from walking in the full authority of who you truly are. Heaven hid you from the wrong people. You weren't invisible. You were veiled. God didn't let certain people see you for what you truly are because they would have drained you, used you, or tried to own something that was never theirs to claim. Some people walked away, not because you lacked value, but because they lacked vision. They couldn't recognize the weight of your soul. They couldn't honor the depth of your spirit. And so, in divine mercy, they were removed, not to hurt you, but to protect the treasure within you, because you're not just someone with potential. You're someone with purpose, a calling, a divine imprint on your life that shakes the spirit realm every time you move in truth. That's why you've been attacked. That's why you've been rejected. That's why the enemy came for you early, before you knew who you were. Because if you ever discovered the truth, if you ever stood in your full light, if you ever healed, rose, and remembered, the very foundations of darkness would tremble, and so you were kept hidden, like a secret weapon, like a quiet storm, like a masterpiece under a veil. But now Now the veil is thinning, the coverings are falling, the world is about to see what only God has seen all along. Chosen one, you were never forgotten. You were preserved. Heaven knew that if the wrong hands touched your calling, they'd taint it. If the wrong ears heard your dreams, they'd curse it. If the wrong people got too close, they'd dilute your energy and derail your journey. So God, in His mercy, created detours. He allowed delays. He permitted rejections, not because you were undeserving, but because you were too valuable to risk. You were being trained in the shadows, in the places where no one was clapping, in the nights where tears fell like rivers, in the moments where you questioned everything, yet still chose to keep walking. That's where your true power was born. Not in the spotlight, not in applause, but in obedience, in endurance, in silent trust. You've been walking through a wilderness, a dry place, a season where nothing seemed to grow, where prayers felt unanswered, where progress felt invisible. But even in that wilderness, heaven was watching, heaven was documenting, heaven was weaving glory into every thread of your pain. Because one day, that wilderness will become your testimony. Your silent nights will become someone else's freedom. Your scars will become signs. Your story will speak life into dry bones. And the people who never saw you coming, they'll witness your rise, and they won't be able to deny that only God could have done it. What the enemy meant for harm, God is turning for glory. What was taken from you, it's being returned, multiplied. What was broken in you, it's being rebuilt, stronger. What was hidden in you, it's about to shine so brightly, no darkness can contain it. You are stepping into a divine reversal, a spiritual comeback, not to prove them wrong, but to prove God right, because this was never about them. This was always about you, about what you carry, about what you've endured, about who you're becoming. So stand tall even if you feel broken. Stand bold even if you feel tired. Stand chosen even if no one has affirmed it. Because your identity was never dependent on the crowd. It was sealed in heaven. You've been walking through fire, but you're coming out gold. You've been misunderstood, but you're about to be undeniable. You've been overlooked, but now it's your turn to overflow. And you didn't lose your life. You surrendered it for something eternal, something holy, something only the chosen ones can carry. If you feel this word in your spirit, if it awakens something deep inside you, something that says, yes, this is me, this is my season, then you already know. You're not alone in this. You were never forgotten. You were just being prepared in silence for a breakthrough that makes noise. And it's almost time. Keep walking, keep rising, keep believing. You didn't come this far just to survive. You came to awaken, to lead, to embody everything heaven trusted you with. You are the evidence. You are the proof. You are the chosen one. Chosen one, let this truth settle deep into your soul. What the enemy touched was never the full picture. They may have interfered with your surroundings. They may have taken what was temporary, but they could never take what heaven sealed inside of you, your essence, your calling, your identity in the Spirit. Those things were off limits, untouchable, protected by divine decree, because God didn't just allow you to survive, He preserved your purpose in the midst of every storm. You've been through attacks that made you question your very existence, moments where betrayal cut deeper than any blade, days where the silence was so loud you could hear the echo of your unanswered prayers bounce back with nothing but stillness. You cried, not just from the pain, but from the confusion. Why did they do it? Why did they walk away? Why did everything seem to collapse right after you gave it your all? But chosen one, that collapse was a shield. God saw the hands around you. He saw the hidden agendas, the silent jealousy, the spirits attached to people who wore friendly faces but carried poisonous intentions. And he let the structure fall, not to hurt you, but to deliver you, because what you were building was pure. But the foundation was compromised, and God loves you too much to let you rise on a cracked floor. So yes, the enemy tried to take, but God preserved what mattered most. Not one tear fell without a purpose. Not one loss happened without divine calculation. Every painful goodbye was permission for a greater hello. Every closed door was redirection, away from a spiritual ambush. And every moment you thought you were alone, angels were dispatched, covering you, surrounding you, fighting battles you didn't even know were happening behind the veil. There's something sacred about being protected in secret. There's something holy about the battles you never had to fight because God fought them for you. And that's what makes you different. Not that you haven't suffered, not that you haven't wept, but that even through it all, your heart remained intact. Your faith held on by threads, yet somehow it never fully broke. You might have lost things along the way, but you never lost your soul, and that is proof of preservation. That is proof of favor. You were being trained every sleepless night, every lonely season, every spiritual wilderness. It wasn't punishment, it was preparation. God was teaching you how to hear him in silence, how to trust him without a sign, how to move in obedience when there was no applause. You were being made into someone the world couldn't manipulate, someone the enemy couldn't bribe, someone with backbone, with discernment, with holy fire, because what's on your life can't be stewarded by someone soft in the spirit. You needed to learn how to see beyond the surface, how to feel what can't be explained, how to sense danger in smiles and identify truth in whispers. That kind of training doesn't happen in crowds. It happens in caves, in the quiet, in the stretch of isolation where your spirit is emptied of everything except him. Chosen one, you weren't being buried, you were being built when no one called, when no one noticed, when everyone assumed you were done. That's when heaven was doing its greatest work in you. That's when the oil was pressed. That's when the fire refined. That's when the sword was sharpened. And now you carry something unshakable, not a title, not a platform, but a presence. A presence that walks into rooms and shifts atmospheres without saying a word. A presence that silences gossip. Not because you fight back, but because your glow convicts. A presence that draws favor from unlikely places, simply because you've been through too much not to walk in divine alignment. You are the evidence that God trains his best warriors in hidden places. You are proof that oil doesn't come without crushing. You've learned to listen when others speak. You've learned to wait when others rush. You've learned to walk away without needing revenge, because your spirit knows that justice is God's. The world doesn't understand it, but heaven celebrates it. Because you didn't just survive, you submitted to the process. You allowed yourself to be reshaped, rerouted, rewired. And now you're not just chosen by title, you're chosen by character, chosen by the endurance you built in silence. Chosen by the faith you carried when there was no reward in sight. And the training isn't in vain, because soon the ones who mocked your journey will witness your rise. Not because you need to prove anything, but because God loves to prepare a table in front of the ones who once doubted your worth. You don't have to clap back. You don't have to argue. Just stay aligned. Just stay obedient. Because your life will speak louder than any explanation. There are people who walked away thinking you were finished. There are voices that counted you out, but they didn't know that your roots were growing deeper when it looked like nothing was happening on the surface. They didn't see the spiritual stretching that was taking place while you were in the shadows. And now you're stepping out, not just healed, but whole. Not just restored, but refined. You carry wisdom that only pain can teach. You speak with the weight of someone who's been through fire and came out anointed. You walk with the stillness of someone who no longer needs validation to know their value. And that is why you were trained. That is why you were hidden, because God wasn't preparing you for popularity. He was preparing you for purpose, and purpose is sacred. Purpose is heavy. Purpose comes with pressure, but it also comes with power. And now you're walking into it fully, unapologetically, authentically. Don't shrink back. Don't doubt the timing. Don't second-guess your worth. Everything you've been through, the losses, the silence, the waiting, it was all a setup for this moment. You're not who you were. You're stronger. You're wiser. You're finally ready. And when the world sees you now, they won't recognize you, because you're not the same. You're not broken anymore. You're rebuilt, recalibrated, realigned. You're dangerous to darkness, not because you shout loud, but because your silence carries authority. You've walked through the valley. You've sat with pain. You've wrestled with God in the night and still said, I won't let go until you bless me. And now you carry the mark of someone who has seen the face of God in the middle of despair. You walk like someone who knows heaven is backing them. You speak like someone who's not afraid to lose, because you've already lost enough to know if it leaves, it wasn't for you. You move like someone who's not chasing anymore, because what's yours in the spirit will always find its way back to you, and that, chosen one, is what sets you apart. Not just the anointing, but the endurance. Not just the gifts, but the grit. Not just the calling, but the character to carry it. So lift your head, straighten your back, step forward, not as someone still healing, but as someone who has been made whole through the healing. You are ready. The world may not see it yet, but heaven already has. And that's why the enemy tried to take you out early, because he saw what was coming before you did, but he failed, because you're still here, still rising, still chosen. Chosen. 1. There's something you need to understand about heaven. Nothing is missed. Not a moment, not a tear, not a betrayal, not a sacrifice. Heaven keeps receipts, everything you've endured, every loss you've quietly buried, every prayer you whispered into the night when no one was listening. It's all been written in the eternal records. You may not have seen immediate justice. You may not have gotten closure from those who hurt you. You may have walked away, carrying questions that felt too heavy for a lifetime. But the silence of man does not mean the silence of God. He's been watching, he's been recording, and he's been preparing something so much greater than you can even imagine. The world taught you to move on quickly, to forget, to pretend it didn't matter, but your soul remembered. Because every time someone disrespected your love, every time someone lied on your name, every time you were taken for granted, heaven recorded it. Not so you could hold on to bitterness, but so divine justice could be fulfilled in its own time. You weren't forgotten. You were observed, and not by people, by the one who holds the scales. The pain you endured wasn't wasted. It was stored, not just for restoration, but for revelation, because one day your story will speak, not just for you, but for others who are still trapped in silent battles. Your healing will become a roadmap. Your survival will become proof. Your scars will become signs. And every injustice will be overturned, not with revenge, but with recompense. You don't have to chase validation. You don't have to prove your worth to people who were never qualified to see you clearly. Heaven has already stamped your name in the records of redemption. You're not fighting for your place anymore. You're walking into what was always yours. And the beauty is, what's coming is not compensation for the loss. It's overflow. Because God doesn't just return what was taken. He multiplies it. He transforms it. He upgrades it. You thought you were just surviving, but you were sowing in tears, sowing in pain, sowing in silence. And now the harvest is coming. Not a trickle, not a crumb, a flood. an outpouring that washes away every remnant of shame, every trace of sorrow, every seed of doubt. And here's the part that will leave even your enemies speechless. They will see it. The same people who dismissed you. The ones who called you too sensitive, too much, too intense. The ones who used your kindness and twisted it for their comfort. They will witness the return. Not so you can gloat, not so you can rub it in their faces, but so they can see that no one, no spirit, no system, no scheme can stop the will of God. They'll watch the one they thought was weak rise with dignity. They'll watch the one they laughed at walk with favor. They'll watch the one they left behind lead with grace. Because God doesn't just restore you privately. Sometimes He makes the restoration public, so that the testimony can pierce through the hearts of those who still doubt His power. Your life becomes the sermon. Your glow becomes the confirmation. Chosen one, you've been through enough to understand that not everyone is meant to walk with you forever. Some were sent to wound you into wisdom. Some were meant to betray you into breakthrough. And while it hurt, and while you questioned why you had to endure so much, the answer is simple. The oil on your life had to be pressed from pressure no one else was willing to carry. You're the one who sat with brokenness until it became your teacher. You're the one who turned loneliness into a sanctuary. You're the one who kept showing up for life even when life gave you nothing back. That's not weakness, that's power. And it's time you stop shrinking to fit spaces that couldn't hold the depth of your transformation. You are the living proof of resurrection power. Your story isn't a tragedy, it's a miracle in motion. The same life that was crushed, stolen, shattered, it's coming back. But not in the same form. It's coming back new, stronger, richer in spirit, clearer in purpose. You're not being rebuilt to look like your past. You're being resurrected to reflect your divine identity. The comeback is spiritual. You're rising in mindset. You're rising in clarity. You're rising in discernment. You're rising in authority. No longer begging for scraps. No longer tolerating less. No longer questioning your value. You know who you are now, and that changes everything, because when a chosen one remembers who they are, the atmosphere responds. You no longer chase alignment, it magnetizes to you. You no longer force connections. They either match your vibration or fall away. You no longer fear endings. They make space for divine beginnings. You've outgrown survival. You're stepping into significance, and with every step, heaven is orchestrating divine appointments, people who honor you, rooms that celebrate you, opportunities that stretch you, not to break you, but to match the level of growth you've embodied in private. The return isn't just material, it's spiritual, peace of mind, emotional freedom, authentic love, purpose-driven direction. The kind of wholeness that money can't buy and the world can't replicate. And it's not just about what's coming. It's about who you've become. You used to need people's approval. Now you move in self-respect. You used to shrink to make others comfortable. Now you walk fully in your truth. You used to second-guess every decision. Now you trust the spirit within you. That's what resurrection looks like. A life reawakened, a soul reignited. A chosen one, no longer hiding, no longer apologizing for the light they carry. You are the evidence that God can restore what looked permanently lost. You are the testimony that divine timing will always trump human expectation. You are the sign that favor isn't earned. It's inherited through alignment. And this is just the beginning. There's more peace coming, more clarity, more revelation. The things you used to cry for, they're about to flow into your life effortlessly, not because life got easier, but because you finally became who you were always meant to be. So rest in this truth. What you lost was never wasted. What you gave up will never go unnoticed. And what's ahead of you is far greater than what's behind. You're not chasing anymore. You're receiving. You're not fighting for a seat at the table. You are the table. You're not waiting to be chosen. You've already been marked by God. The world may not understand your journey. They may not know the depth of what you've endured, but heaven knows. And heaven has kept every receipt, stored every sacrifice, bottled every tear. And now, heaven is responding. Not with a whisper, but with a move, a shift that will leave. No doubt that what they thought was the end of you was only the beginning of your awakening. Chosen one, stand firm, stay aligned, and keep your heart open. You didn't come this far just to be restored. You came to reign, not in pride, but in power, not to dominate, but to deliver, not to fit in, but to rise authentically, unapologetically, divinely. You are walking into overflow, into evidence, into a life that no longer mirrors the pain of your past, but reflects the promise of your purpose. And that's why you've been hidden. That's why it felt like everything was taken, because what's being given now is too powerful to have been built on anything less than truth. You are the chosen one, and your time has come. Chosen one, what you thought was the end was only the beginning of something far more beautiful, far more powerful than your human eyes could ever comprehend. The things you lost, the people, the time, the dreams you had to release, they were never taken to leave you empty. They were surrendered in the spirit to make room for what carries eternal value. And now you're standing at the edge of a divine shift, not a small change, not a subtle adjustment, but a full transformation, a total reversal, one that heaven has been orchestrating behind the scenes of your life. There are moments in life where the weight of disappointment can feel unbearable, where you wonder if you'll ever feel truly whole again, if you'll ever laugh without guarding your heart, if you'll ever believe again without hesitation. But hear this, what's ahead of you will make peace with what hurt you. What's coming will silence every lie spoken over your life. The blessings waiting for you aren't just rewards. They are spiritual confirmations that your journey, your pain, your choices to keep trusting, they were not in vain. You didn't imagine your calling. You didn't dream up your purpose. You were born with it. Heaven encoded your essence with it, and everything you've been through, the dark nights, the inner battles, the lonely paths, they've all been part of your awakening. You see, the truth is, if you hadn't lost what you did, you wouldn't be who you are. And who you are now, you're stronger, wiser, softer yet sharper. You feel deeply, and yet you no longer bleed for those who never intended to heal with you. That balance, that strength, it's divine, and it's rare. Not everyone will understand it. Not everyone is supposed to, because you're not called to be understood. You're called to be impactful. You were never meant to echo what the world is already shouting. You were meant to bring a new sound, a new vibration, a holy frequency that disturbs everything built on lies and activates everything anchored in truth. That's why the shaking had to happen. That's why life had to interrupt your comfort. You weren't created to blend in with noise. You were crafted to carry a voice that awakens souls. And now, that voice is rising. You're no longer the same person who once begged for clarity. You're no longer the version of yourself that tolerated spiritual crumbs. You've evolved into someone who recognizes that divine delay is still divine alignment. You've stopped rushing the process because now you understand. The slow burn builds the strongest fire. And that fire inside of you, it's not just for survival, it's for leadership, for healing, for guiding others out of the same darkness you once called home. Chosen one, your identity is no longer based on what you've been through, it's based on what you've overcome. You've walked through rejection, and yet your love grew deeper. You've endured betrayal, and yet your heart remained open. You've been isolated, and yet your light never dimmed. That's not normal. That's divine resilience, that's spiritual maturity, that's kingdom identity. And because of that, you are now stepping into a life you don't have to chase, a life that responds to your frequency, a life where you no longer force things, but flow into them. You no longer knock on doors. Doors open when you arrive, not out of ego, but out of alignment. Because when someone has walked through fire and still carries peace, the world notices. When someone has been misunderstood and still moves with grace, heaven takes record. Everything about your life now will reflect the truth that God's hand has always been on you. No more questioning if you're doing enough. No more comparing your path to others. No more looking outside for validation that was already written into your spirit. You are the one. Not because you're perfect, but because you've allowed the process to perfect something inside of you. Not because you never fell, but because you kept rising every time. Not because you have all the answers, but because you've learned to listen to the one who does. And now it's time for restoration. The kind that doesn't just return what was lost, but returns it better, deeper, richer in wisdom, stronger in foundation. Restoration that brings clarity to confusion, peace to pain, and purpose to every piece of your past. This is your resurrection season, not just emotionally, not just mentally, but spiritually. Your identity is no longer built on survival, it's built on divine assignment. And when you walk like someone who knows they've been chosen, the atmosphere has no choice but to respond. Everything begins to shift. People who once ignored, you begin to remember you. Opportunities that once felt blocked begin to find you, and most of all, the inner peace you once searched for becomes your natural state of being. That's the power of a soul that's been through the storm and still knows how to praise. That's the presence of someone who's lost everything and yet walks like nothing is missing, because nothing is missing. Every piece of your journey has led to this moment. Every mistake, every delay, every detour. They were all tools in the hand of a master craftsman, building a version of you that doesn't just survive this life, but transforms it. You are that version now. You've become the answered prayer, the healing presence, the living miracle that others didn't even know they were waiting for. And what's wild, you didn't even have to force it. You just kept showing up, kept believing, kept surrendering, even when your hands were empty and your heart was breaking. That level of trust, that is sacred. That is what moves heaven on your behalf, and it's why the floodgates are opening, not because you begged for it, but because you became ready for it. You let go of the old mindset, the limited beliefs, the people who couldn't see you, the patterns that kept you stuck. You laid it all down, not because you had to, but because you were ready to rise without it. And now that you have, nothing can stop what's unfolding, not fear, not doubt, not the past, not even you. Because once a chosen one has been activated, the ripple effect cannot be reversed. So walk boldly now, speak clearly, love freely, serve with your whole heart, and move like someone who knows their life is a divine assignment, because it is, and it always has been. Your journey was never random, your tears were never wasted, your silence was never empty, your pain was never pointless, and your rise will never be small. You've been through the valley, you've been tested in the dark, you've been forged in fire, and now you are the evidence of what divine timing looks like, no longer looking for signs, because now you are the sign, no longer asking for permission, because now you walk in purpose, no longer waiting for a move, because now you are the move. So, keep going, keep rising, keep becoming. There is still more within you, still more to unfold, still more to awaken. And the world hasn't even seen the full expression of who you are yet. But heaven has, and heaven is smiling. Because you've remembered, you've returned, you've risen, you are the chosen one. and this is your season to reign. Chosen one, pause and breathe in this truth. You were never meant to live an ordinary life. From the very beginning, something about you was different, not louder, not flashier, just deeper. There's always been a certain stillness in your spirit, a quiet wisdom behind your eyes, a sacred weight you've carried that most can't see. And that's not by accident, that's by design. You were born to disturb comfort zones, to carry light into dark places, to speak truth where silence once reigned. And because of that calling, your path was never going to be typical. You weren't made to follow maps created by those who could never see your mountain. You weren't placed on this earth to play small, to shrink your voice, to keep your light dimmed so others would feel comfortable. That's why your soul never settled for what others accepted. That's why you felt tension in rooms that praised what you knew was hollow. That's why deep down you've always known there was more, not just for you, but from you. And now, that quiet inner knowing is rising to the surface like never before. You can feel it, the pull, the stretch, the divine invitation calling you out of hiding, not to impress, not to perform, but to become, fully, unapologetically, unmistakably, who you already are. You don't need anyone's permission anymore. Not the approval of the ones who couldn't see you, not the validation of the ones who walked away, not the confirmation of systems that were never built with your spirit in mind. You've already been chosen. You've already been called. And if life stripped everything familiar from your hands, it was only to reveal what could never be taken from your soul. You've survived things others don't talk about. You've endured battles behind smiles. You've cried in the presence of God when no one else was watching, and still you rose the next morning. Still you gave. Still you believed. That kind of resilience isn't man-made. It's heaven-born. And now you're stepping into the season where everything aligns. Not because you forced it, but because you became it. There's no longer a need to explain yourself, no longer a need to water down your message, no longer a need to carry the weight of other people's comfort over your own calling. Because the truth is, this world doesn't need more copies. It needs your authenticity. It needs the voice you silenced for years. It needs the dream you kept hidden in the back of your spirit. It needs the vision you almost gave up on when the pain felt louder than the promise. But look at you now, still. Breathing, still carrying light, still waking up with purpose, even when no one claps for it. That's power, and it's time you honor it. It's time you stop waiting for the world to affirm what God has already anointed. It's time you stop searching for signs when you are the signs someone else has been praying for. You were never too much. Your depth is not a flaw. Your emotions are not weaknesses. Your intuition is not confusion. Your standards are not pride. They are evidence of your spiritual DNA. You're wired differently because you're designed for something greater than comfort. You're designed for impact, for healing, for freedom. Not just for yourself, but for the souls, your voice. Your story and your presence will awaken, and yes, it's taken time. Yes, it's cost you relationships, opportunities, even your peace at times. But every sacrifice was a seed. Every lonely night was soil. Every step forward, no matter how small, was part of the blueprint. And now the fruit is about to bloom, not for show, not for applause, but for purpose, for legacy, for divine influence. So lift your head. You don't need to arrive. You're already walking in destiny. You don't need to prove anything. You are the proof. Every chapter of your story, yes, even the parts that felt unfair or unbearable, were chapters heaven intends to redeem. You don't have to carry shame anymore. You don't have to carry the weight of who you used to be, or what they said, or what didn't work. The page has turned. The old has fallen away. You're not rising with borrowed strength anymore. You're rising with rooted authority, with peace that cannot be shaken, with vision that cannot be dimmed, with wisdom born from the fire, With faith that no longer depends on feelings, you are no longer the version of yourself who tolerated less just to belong. You belong to something higher. You've outgrown the rooms that used to validate you. You've outgrown the roles you used to play for survival. Now, you walk in truth, and that truth is enough, because when a chosen one walks in their full truth, when they trust divine timing, surrender ego, and move with sacred confidence, real power enters the room. You don't need to know every step. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to say yes. Yes to becoming. Yes to walking. Yes to the whispers of purpose pulling at your heart. Even if you still feel unsure, even if there's trembling in your hands, even if no one claps when you take the next step, walk anyway, because faith was never about certainty. It was always about surrender. And when you move in surrender, heaven moves with you. Doors open, not because you force them, but because they recognize the spirit inside you. And from this moment on, let this truth lead you. You are not who the world said you were. You are not defined by what you lost, what broke you, or who left you behind. You are defined by who held you in the silence, by who whispered your name in the dark, by who breathed life into your bones when the world went silent, and that one never left. He's still here, still guiding, still loving, still shaping your story into something far more beautiful than you ever imagined. So rise, chosen one, rise with all your scars. Rise with your heart still soft. Rise with your spirit still open. Because you carry something sacred, and the world needs it. You were never meant to just make it through. You were meant to rise and radiate, to lead with love, to awaken the weary, to remind others of what they forgot. That healing is real, that God is near, that broken things become beautiful when surrendered, that chosen ones are never abandoned, only hidden until the appointed time, and that time is now. Now is the moment to reclaim your life. Now is the season to speak with your whole voice. Now is the call to stand in your full light. No more shrinking, no more apologizing, no more questioning your worth. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to break through, and now that you have, don't stop, keep going, keep becoming, keep walking like the miracle you are, because you're not just living a story. You are the story. You are the light. You are the shift. You are the confirmation that God still chooses ordinary people for extraordinary purpose. Chosen one, go forward with fire in your soul, peace in your heart, and the full awareness that everything behind you prepared you for everything ahead. You are ready. Heaven has spoken. Now walk in it.